What's going on, guys? Patrick here from PatrickOnRealty.com, and I just finished standing into a 5-hour meeting. Now, mind you, I only kind of clocked in, clocked out because I got things I got to do. But a 5-hour meeting going over the new ordinance or bill that is possibly going to pass that is going to change the market for investors and Airbnb owners out here in Oahu. So we're going to go over all the details. This is going to change a lot of things if it passes for current owners, possible new investors, the market. It's going to change a lot of things. So make sure you stick around to get all the details. See you on the other side. Okay, guys, so like I discussed, there is a new ordinance that's just been drafted for Airbnbs and short-term rentals. There was a bill that was passed, I believe it was in 2018 or possibly 2019, Bill 85 and 89. Check out this video I posted a while back going over those rules. And those were the rules that we had in place for a while. Basically, it was if you wanted to run a short-term rental, you had to either be in a resort zone, which is basically in Waikiki, Ko'olina, and a couple other spots. You had to have a NUC license, which they passed out a few. They originally passed them out, I believe it was in 1989, where they passed out a handful of them and people had those. And then they were planning on passing out more of them, but that got pushed back because of COVID. Or you could run a vacation rental if you did it for 30 days or more. That was basically the rules they had in place. Now, they're now drafting up this new ordinance or new bill that is possibly going to change a lot of those rules because people have been kind of trying to get around them and doing certain things, understandably, because they are either trying to make sure they pay their mortgage or what have you. So there's been a lot of discussion and people going on one side of the fence or on the other side of the fence saying it's bad for the communities, it's bad for the neighborhoods. Other people on the investor side saying, hey, you're taking away my property rights. I bought this property. I should be able to do what I want with it. And there's so many different ways to look at it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to show you exactly what the new drafted bill is requiring that hasn't been passed yet, but will be requiring as the new rules and regulations. And then I'm going to open up a couple different points that I heard from the hotel management companies and associations, as well as normal people like you and I who are either property owners, who are for it, against it, and everything in between. So we'll go over a lot of different perspectives. And what I really want to get from you guys is putting in the comment section down below, what do you guys think about this new possible bill that may be passed that could be changing the market? Okay, so the first new rule and basic regulation that they're proposing to put in is changing the minimum of 30 days that you can rent your place to 180 days. And the main reason why they're doing this is because they've been having difficulty regulating it because people have been basically kind of working this gray area and this loophole where they basically can rent their place for 2 weeks or maybe under the 30 days and then rent it again. And then basically anybody that comes to say, hey, sign this 30-day lease, and that will basically cover my butt. If anybody comes after me, I can say, oh, look, they signed a 1-month lease. And they would just do that for anybody that would come through. They would advertise it on Airbnb or what have you and say, yeah, you can rent this place 30 days minimum. They would contact them, and then maybe they would just kind of do it under the table. So I can understand why they're trying to do this. Honestly, I think there's a better way than to kind of slap this one rule. Boom, it's 6 months or bust. Boom! That kind of kicks out a lot of people who might want to rent for kind of that middle ground area. Maybe I only want to rent it for 3 months. Maybe it's somebody from the mainland who's working remote and wants to live in Hawaii and they want to rent a place for 3 months, or they're a consultant, or maybe they're a traveling nurse and they don't want to live in a hotel for 3 months. This kind of kicks out that option. Now, they have been discussing having exemptions, but none of that is actually in the documentation. That's just something verbally that they're saying. So there's a lot of different ways you can look at this. I think it's a little overextending a bit. Over the line! I can understand the reasoning because they want to have an easier way to restrict what people can do and not take advantage of these certain loopholes. But I think it's something they really need to dig deeper into than just saying, boom, it's 180 days or bust. Now, the next big restriction or rule is there's going to be additional fees and restrictions on legal TVUs and properties in resort zones. So TVU stands for Transient Vacation Unit, I believe it is. And then you have resort zones, right? So resort zones, again, is in Ko'olina. We have a lot in Waikiki, where basically a lot of people bought a property that was in a resort zone, so it was legal for them at the time to do short-term rentals. But now they're being slapped with this new additional fee, which is going to be a $5,000 application fee and then an additional $2,500 a year to basically have to renew every single year to be able to rent their unit. Now, again, this is a little harsh in my eyes for somebody who probably did a lot of research up front to make sure that they're obeying the laws, paying their taxes, and buying a property specifically because of the zoning. And then all of a sudden, boom, like that, they change and add a new additional fee that you have to pay, application fee, and this new yearly fee. And then there's probably additional fees and regulations and rules that probably haven't been spelled out yet. And then on the flip side, people who have NUCs, non-conforming use certificate, which I believe they only passed out in 1989. I think there's like 115 out on the entire island. Those people do not have restrictions. So they basically have been grandfathered in. Now, I would think that if you purchase a property, it's in a resort zone, why not just grandfather those people in as well? And then maybe anybody moving forward, you have this new application fee and things like that. It seems a little unfair to have somebody who purchased a property, did a lot of research, did a lot of investing, fixing it up, things like that. And then all of a sudden, just because they want to change the rules, that it just screws them over. Why not grandfather them in, and then anybody new coming in maybe have to do those new rules and regulations? Again, put your comments down below what you think about that. Now, the third thing, which really seems pretty sketchy, honestly, very sketchy, is that if you purchase a CONDOTEL, which is basically like a hotel room that you own and you can rent out, because it's in a hotel, it's basically in a resort zone. So you are legal to do a short-term rental. And when you have a CONDOTEL, it's basically that, it's a hotel. You can't really live in it. It's usually kind of difficult. They usually have a small kitchen or no kitchen. Sometimes you can, and you have the right to if you want to, because it's your residence, your property, you can do what you want with it. But a lot of people buy them, usually snowbirds, people who want to stay there a couple weeks, and then they want to rent it out the rest of the time. And they have the legal right to manage it themselves, hire a company to manage it for them and do things like that. Or they have the option to go to the hotel and say, hey, Mr. Hotel, do you guys want to manage this for me? Take a little off top, put it in your pool. You can rent it out for me and we'll just kind of split the difference, which is great. That's not a bad option for certain people who are in certain situations. But having that flexibility of saying, yes, Mr. Hotel, you can manage it for me if you want, or I can manage it myself, my property. I can do what I want with it. Now what they're basically saying is that if you own a CONDOTEL, you cannot manage it. The hotel is the only person who can manage it.
Wait.
And that seems really sticky. That seems like it smells like hotel lobbyists are all over this, basically saying, oh, you purchased this property a couple years ago as a CONDOTEL. You did have the right to manage it yourself, but now you have to have us rent it for you, and we have to take our piece of the pie. Seems a little sketchy and sticky to me. Honestly, that's really pushing on your property rights, and I don't really like that rule whatsoever. A lot of these rules I think are a little sketchy and honestly smell like hotel lobbyists all over it, but I'll let you guys make your assumptions. So anyways, guys, that's pretty much the main takeaways. I'm gonna add this other section. I watched this meeting and listened in. I heard a lot of different people, a lot of different angles. So I'm gonna go over some of the testimonies that I heard and what they said and give a little feedback on it. Okay, the first thing is one of the representatives from the DPP, or the Department of Planning and Permitting, was answering some questions and kind of had some weird responses. This was one of the big ones that I saw. They basically were saying at first, before COVID, they were saying, okay, we're gonna give out these licenses so everybody can do it. And these licenses are gonna be based on a percentage of the population in a certain area. So the North Shore basically had 0, Waikiki had a bunch because the population was large there, and they were gonna give out 1,700 licenses out. There was 8,000 illegal rentals being out, so they're like, okay, let's do 1,700 legal licenses, we can tax them, we can do all that. I thought that was a great idea. So they basically just said, you know what, we're gonna throw that out the window, we're not gonna do the 1,700 licenses anymore, we're just not going to do them at all. So they kept pushing it. Now they've just said, no, we're not going to do it anymore. It's only going to be what we have, which is basically 800 units. 115 of them are in residential areas, and the other 685 units are basically in like Ko'olina, condos, apartments, Waikiki, things like that. So they basically just put the kibosh on those licenses that they were promising that they were going to be giving out, which was going to be an additional 1,700, when right now there's only 830,000 hotel units. So it seems a little sketchy to me. Another thing that they said, the Department of Planning and Permitting said that they have raised $3 million to have a dedicated team who's going to be monitoring these illegal units. So prior to that, they basically had people Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. who would monitor online, make calls, basically would be the police of it, but they didn't really have a fund for it, so nobody was really being regulated. And that's how a lot of people were just putting their stuff on Airbnb basically on the weekends and then taking it down Monday at 7:59 before everybody got on shift. And that's basically how they got around it. So now they're basically going to be having $3 million that they're going to be putting towards having a branch that's going to be specifically for finding illegal rentals, which I think is a good idea. If you're trying to regulate it, do it. I would say though, like before you start putting all these new rules, if you weren't monitoring it before, you don't really have a good benchmark of there being a problem right now. Like if there's a problem right now, you'd have the data to back it up. Complaints, you would have had somebody in place actually monitoring and saying, yeah, we're seeing a lot of complaints coming in, but you didn't even have a branch in place yet. So why not just use that $3 million, have the dedicated staff, and start monitoring what we have currently instead of possibly screwing over a lot of property owners and people who are doing it legally. And it seems kind of sketchy. I thought this was really funny. The DPP, again, he was speaking. He got a lot of questions from the public. One was that he was saying,
we're getting a lot of complaints, that these short-term rentals, we're trying to create more housing for the local community, and these short-term renters are coming in and ruining residential areas.
And somebody said, I was just curious, you said that we're doing this because it's ruining residential areas. Are you getting a handful of complaints? What complaints have you gotten? Have you spoken to any of the local governmental bodies in those local neighborhoods or any communities? And they basically said,
no, we haven't done that. We haven't monitored that.
So how did you come to this consensus that you're getting lots of complaints if you don't have a branch that's handling it, or you just said that you haven't spoken to anybody about it? Again, seems kind of sketchy. Hotel lobbyists, maybe? Now, the big one that I really don't agree with is that the hotels have to manage your CONDOTEL. If you bought a CONDOTEL, now you don't have the right as a property owner to manage it yourself. Now, when they asked the DPP guy, hey, why are we putting this rule in place? Their reasoning is,
it's too difficult to monitor and to basically track because you have some units that are owned by the hotel and some owned by actual property owners, and it's hard to just track it.
Well, that's your job.
Get to work!
That's why you have $3 million to have somebody to track it. Don't just screw over a bunch of property owners because you guys haven't figured out the logistics on how to manage it and to track who owns, who's paying, who's not, who's obeying the rules. That's what you have that $3 million for. Use it. Now, the other thing that I thought was kind of interesting is there was one lady who spoke and said, hey, I own a CONDOTEL. I live in it as my primary residence, and then I own 2 or 3 other units in that same building, and I manage that myself. So now you're forcing me to have to use the hotel company. I also have to make alterations to the property, which was mine, that now has to match the hotel's rules and regulations because they want all the rooms to look exactly the same. So now I got to spend money to change my unit that I upgraded for myself, for my rentals, for the property that I own. Now I have to conform to your rules. Again, I would look deeper into that, but that's something she said, and I thought that was kind of an interesting concept where it's really being kind of communist in the sense where it's like, I bought this property, now you're telling me what I can or can't do with it, and now I gotta make alterations and changes. Are you gonna pay me for the renovations that I did and now have to switch back? Again, very sticky.
Mother Russia does not agree.
Now, from a real estate investing side, this is something very interesting that somebody brought up, is that it's very difficult to find a legal Airbnb property to purchase. And the reason why is as soon as it comes on the market, if anybody sees, NUC attached to it, it increases the value of the property because you know that you're walking into a turnkey business. You have the license, you're ready to rock and roll, you can start renting it out. Sometimes they'll even sell you basically the Airbnb account so that you have all the reviews there. It's a turnkey business. Now basically what they're saying is that when you bought that property for probably a lot more than the other unit that doesn't have the NUC, you just paid a premium for that NUC, which is now going to basically be worth nothing. If you purchase something and you paid a premium for it because of the legal rights in that time, now you're gonna have to sell it at a discount, which you're most likely gonna possibly be forced to sell it because of all these rules and regulations, and you're really getting hit really hard because of you bought it and paid a premium because of you obeying the regulations and having the license attached to it, but now you're saying that license is not worth anything now. So again, kind of a sticky situation for property owners who may own legal Airbnbs, and they're really getting kind of screwed over in this whole situation and kind of being paired into, yours is now being paired in with all the other illegal Airbnbs, and we're putting this one rule against everybody. I really think at the end of the day, they need to look deeper into this ordinance and look into the finer details and not just blanket everybody with all these rules and regulations. You need to look specifically in every situation. Property owners, maybe grandfather them into certain situations. Do the hotels really need to manage every single condotel, even if you own it and you've owned it for years, just because it's hard for them to manage the monitoring it. It all just seems really sketchy. Anyways, guys, you probably see which side of the fence I lean on. I'm all about property rights. If you buy a property specifically for using it for an Airbnb and you're doing it legally, I think that that's your right. You obeyed the rules that the government put in place, and I think they're kind of overstepping now by basically screwing over a lot of people. It's very sticky, and I'm not quite sure how I feel about it. But more importantly, I want to know how you guys feel about this. What do you guys think about these rules and regulations? Put them in the comment section down below. I'm pretty sure this is gonna be a popular video where a lot of people are gonna be on a lot of different sides of the fence. So I'd love to hear what you guys have to say about it. As new things come out, I will make new updated videos, but this is hot off the press. It hasn't been put into place yet. It's more in discussions, but they just had like basically a 5-hour discussion on it, and I listened into it, and I'm just regurgitating what I've learned from it so you guys can be aware of this. If you're looking to move to Hawaii, buy a property, want to Airbnb it, just know that right now might not be the best situation to go buy an Airbnb. You may want to wait a little bit to see what happens, because it could strongly affect your investment or your living situation. So anyways, guys, that pretty much wraps it up. I'm Patrick with PatrickLawrenRealty.com, powered by eXp Realty. If you guys want to stay connected and want to know what's going on with these updates, make sure you subscribe and click that notification bell so as soon as I drop new videos, you get notified immediately. Also, if you want to reach out to me directly, check out any of my social media accounts. You can directly DM me. I'd love to communicate with you directly. And then again, put some comments in the comment section down below. What do you guys think of these rules and regulations? Good? Bad? What do you guys think? Anyways, guys, I'll talk to you soon. You have a beautiful day. Aloha.